So there's something that I'm seeing apparently. Molyneux is having a blast, apparently, getting under people's skin about G, general intelligence or crystallized intelligence. So what's fascinating is all these people with stuff like I like science and stuff in their Twitter handle, but they won't discuss the difference between elastic intelligence, which is what you're educated in, so kind of what you gain from the environment, and crystallized intelligence, the fundamental base from which you're operating, your motherboard in your head. They won't deal with the difference between these, even though those are obvious to even Gardnerian intelligence nut jobs, like people who say there isn't even a thing called intelligence. Even those nut jobs know, because they argue for environment. The argument for environment is elastic intelligence. What I find interesting is sort of the doubling back over the logic of the argument being made. So the argument being made is intelligence has a crystallized component G, measured psychometrically as an intelligence quotient. There's this idea that it's so much pseudoscience that it's like some kind of fuzzy math or something like that, which is even more hilarious. It gets even funny. The more you start to actually have to walk through what could these people's arguments be, and if you've studied how intelligence is measured, the entire history of it, such as by reading the bell curve, which he goes through the history of how intelligence even became measured. By going through something like that, you realize, like, this isn't goofy, crazy math. These people are going out of their way to make sure all of their data is easily attainable. This isn't like quantitative easing, that they're just naming, something another word. Oh, there's a bluebird. Wait, let's see if we can see it. Can you see the bluebird? Bluebird on my shoulder. Yeah, he's still there. Okay. Look at that. So cool. Yes, Mr. Bluebird. Well, I'm looking at you. I think the kids are running around out back. Oh, there he goes. All right. Yeah, and so it's the... I know. Oh my gosh, kid, you got another bump on your head. What did you do this time? Oh my God, that kid. I don't know what he's gonna do. He's gonna have one hard head when he's older. He's always leading with his noggin. All right. So the whole thing of the crystallized intelligence argument, or the Gardnerian kind of thing, this environmental thing, which just nobody who really does the quantitative research on this, there's nobody saying this is anything more than 5 to maybe at the most generous about 15% of outcomes. Most of it's coming from how you inherited everything. Your personality is inherited from your parents, that even if you're separated from them, this is the beauty of twin studies, that we could find out, oh no, this is that their environment had very little to do with their outcomes. These twins separated at birth actually had these oddly similar outcomes, even though they were in disparate environs. So what they want to do is say, oh, well, black people aren't taught to read. That's why their reading scores are lower. Black people aren't taught to math. The white people don't teach the black people to math. As if no black people have ever learned math. And if you look at the world around you, you have to very quickly ascertain that, well, that can't be true. And so it's, oh no, but you see the poverty. The poverty is what do it. See, the teachers, when they teach, the kids are hungry. Now, once again, any analysis of the poor in America shows, no, the poor in America are in no way, shape, or form starving. There's not even, literally you have to be talking about the most destitute fundamentally insane homeless people. Even homeless people have problems with being overweight in the United States. And having access to too much drugs and alcohol. So it's not that they're desperate for food. This isn't Fallout. You know, these motherfuckers have access. They have heroin rigs. You know, it's like, so they possess things even. The public goes way out of their way to feed them. It's just, so there's all these stacks of things that you're like, you do understand that that can't be true. Most of what we know about the IQ comes out of military exams. And there's no turning around it. This means that what we're dealing with, again, with people who have a problem with IQ, this is probably once again the issue of, oh, you don't understand. Military people do math. The military doesn't just let chumps into their higher echelons. There's officer training school. There's all these, the officer corps. The reason they're officers is because they would be the people who would be executives in management in the civilian side, in the private sector. This is why people will leave as an officer and go straight into the management area of sectors. Somebody I know was somebody I met, he was a naval and I think a Marine. A Marine went into the Navy, then became an officer in the Navy. And yeah, he was balling. He was balling out of control actually in control systems. Now, to most people who would object to IQ and things like that, they'd be like, what? Control systems? Yeah, like doors. You hit a button someplace, how do you make that open so that something can go through? Well, there's control, I mean, HVAC has control systems. You know, you got to let a substance pass through and then you got to stop it. Your heart with its valves, those are control systems. A prison is full of all kinds of control systems. Well, I mean, that's high-level shit. You actually really have to know your stuff. When I met this man, when I look around his surroundings, they're impeccably well kept. Impeccably so. This coincides with high IQ, being very, very organized and disciplined. Now, some people will say, oh, but I know a smart guy who blah, 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 blah. Oh, this person might be so smart, they're actually kind of insane. Or because the person I'm talking about was also an alpha male. He had a lady he was married to at the time. He won the girl. And you know, and they were together for I think about 20 years from what I understand, somewhere around there. So that's another one where I'm like, yes, you see, this is somebody that did all the requisite steps to prepare for what they wanted their goal to be. He ran a DJ crew. That's how I really know him. So he bought nothing but original rarities too. So this is you know, a 45 for no less than, you know, $20, and usually averaging somewhere close to 100. That's like the kind of records that this guy spun, and almost all 45s. He didn't want, there was a rule among that type of people. You don't put an LP on our tables. That's why I never spun with these guys. I never had the 45 collection. I mean, I was never invited, but it was also, I didn't have that collection of 45s. So, people who are very, very smart are sort of a separate category. And when they're way up there, when their environment, their elastic intelligence and their crystallized intelligence have dovetailed very well, like they've actually been in some elite level of doing things, so that they don't conceive of why people drink cheap beer, don't don't shower, like you didn't leave yourself enough time to shower this morning. How is that possible? To some people, this just isn't possible. And there's all sorts of little behaviors like that once you don't deal with people like this, you just don't, and they don't deal with you. It's very clear. It becomes actual. There's an actual division. This is why the bell curve is such an important book. It's mapping out, like, there are behaviors of the highly elite intelligentsia, or those who are elite levels of IQ and skill, that they will never behave or even understand the behavior of people dumber than them. And people dumber than them will always fear that group, because they could see it's like magic that they just do stuff, and they do it right the first or second time. And it's almost like magic. The dumber people simply cannot not, like, drink themselves to sleep. They can't do it. There's things that they just can't get their mind to do it. And I could understand why people would be, especially in the millennial generation, where physicality has less import than when I was younger. Like, if you could dance well, that was its own. You were kind of that person in the crew. Like, oh, dude, yeah, it's great going out with him because, dude, he's just this amazing dancer, and like, if you could banter with people well and talk with people well, that was a big deal. Like, if you have charisma, I could actually make sure that this is actually one of the things. Many millennials don't properly understand charisma either. This really comes up in internet oddballs who, like, people who fuck with Ralph, upsetty spaghetti guy, and other people who are just super, super, like, unlikable. That you're like, okay, you do understand why you're trying to fuck with Ralph and Zidane and Gator. Zidane and Gator are smart and fast. Their heads work fast. And Ralph has a natural gift of gab. That's a gift. If you don't have it, you can't do it. It's very, very hard. That's why there's some people who are dope MCs and other people who they're on the microphone for 20 years and they're just and they're never anything interesting. Some people, they could just say stuff and you're like, that doesn't even mean anything, and I want to repeat it all the time because it's so fucking great sounding. I mean, like, wait a minute, Matt. No. Just it's the way he said it. That's charisma. And it's also, there's an aspect of intelligence, but this is where you get the elastic aspect. You get some of the other qualities. Ralph is obviously pretty damn bright. Actually, he's probably a lot smarter than he would like to admit. And the way he uses it, this is what a lot of people who object to the whole G thing, they're really trying to deal with the way you focus your intelligence. That's the elastic part, and that's why it's very important you know something about your own lineage, and you deal with the fact that it's inherited. If you come from a family of people who were really good at singing and music, it's very likely you have a genetic ability to hear notes, and to then, when you, with an instrument or your own head, you make that note. I can hear a note. If I try to make the sound, I'm off every time by the same register. Something doesn't work right. I actually, and so if I were to have ever tried to get into music, I would have to constantly alter my understanding of the register, what octave I'm at and stuff like that. Because I don't, when I'm hearing it, it's coming into the ears, into the brain. When I try to reproduce it, something doesn't work right. This is not uncommon. People hear words. They speak words to other people. If they were to speak to a room, they suddenly cannot muster their reason People say, oh, anxiety, public speaking, blah, blah, blah. No, no, no. I have no problem speaking to a room full of people. None. I engage them like, I mean, to me, it doesn't even make sense. I don't understand why people would in any way, shape, or form be nervous, unless there was like a grade you were getting. I don't understand why people are nervous in front of crowds. But that's because in some way, shape, or form, that's an inherited trait. I feel comfortable speaking to total strangers and crowds of them. Now, I don't like being in a crowd. Makes me nervous. I get very anxious if I'm surrounded by people. All of these are something that in some way, shape, or form is probably a genetic inheritance issue. Like, let me make this example of, there are people who obviously hate a crowded bus. There's whole populations of the Western world that crowded buses they don't like it. Now, technically, you want buses crowded. You actually want to get the most number of people on. That's the whole point of public transportation, is the efficiency. Now, if you live in something like San Francisco, you realize there are people who nothing about a crowded bus bothers them. Their ethnic group seems to have no problem being shoulder to shoulder with other people. They yelling at the top of their lungs, at each other, and their language. It sounds like yelling. It's that they're speaking they're speaking the language they have to speak at the volume they have to speak because of the way that the language works. But have no problem being like smashed in. That's not uncomfortable. They're part of town. You can't even figure out how to walk because there's a whole different unspoken set of rules. Now, these people might not even live in that part of town. They might be there because all of their people are. You could all guess if you've been to San Francisco where I'm talking about. And they'll all walk shoulder to shoulder, and they'll just it's real easy for them. And until you get used to it, you just aren't. And you're bewildered by, like, there's just people everywhere. How the fuck what the hell, And these are all inherited qualities. The environment is created by the inherited qualities. This is why Slavs are different than Germans. But they all occupy the same continent. But both of them know they are significantly different from one another. People who want to contest IQ, they want to contest inheritance. They want to contest inherited behavioral traits. The problem is there's no evidence for that. All the evidence says you inherit most of what you are, and that the environment really is about the last 10%. Which then there's even more ramifications from this. This is why the whole memory holding of information is so dangerous. This also shows people who would memory hole information says a lot about, like, really, one, the kind of personalities they inherited. Two, it actually points to sort of this idea of, if the people were to know this, they would become dangerous. There's that kind of thing. The unwashed dirtbags, all these peasants, if they knew what the Fed really was about, if they knew that actually, none of this about Trump and Russia was true, what would they do? If they knew that public school teachers actually almost in no way, shape, or form are better, in fact, actually they're most likely some of the least accomplished of higher education. What would the masses do if they knew that you could hire almost any barista, and they in children 5 through about 12, you throw a barista in front of them, and that barista is going to teach just as well. you know, that unfortunately, many parents would be better off actually homeschooling their children and just hanging out and watching YouTube videos with them. That their kid would actually learn more that way. Small community schooling, that kind of thing would actually cause them to learn quite a bit more. And that's the problem, because we know that's true. We could look back in time and look before there was widespread public schooling for almost your entire youth. Most people were in the workforce by the age of 16, and like seriously in the workforce, not like a cashier. Like they were really doing real work that actually like would almost be a union and salary job now, So this, a big part of this is there's a lot of people who want to make money talking. There's a lot of people who want to make money pontificating. There's a lot of people want to get paid for their hobbies. This is a big one with scientists that don't agree, that they know the globe is warming, but IQ, that's a bunch of malarkey. That a lot of those people just want to get paid for their hobby. And I like that Stefan Molyneux is really starting to, that's where I got that from. And I'm glad Molyneux's getting under their skin about all this. Because this isn't, this whole thing, this is white supremacy. Well, but that can't work, because the Han and the Hebrews come out highest in IQ. So I'm sorry that, that you keep on bullshitting. Keep on bullshitting. And then they're like, oh, well, yeah, now that they realize it's actually Jews and Chinese people are the smartest, I guess those white supremacists, blah, 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 blah. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Aren't you all discriminating against both of these groups on the left? And especially the dumbest end of the left is going out of its way to discriminate against these people openly. Look who assaults Asian people. Look at the Asians being kept out of Harvard. Asians being kept out of the UC system. There are ways of gaming things so that basically it's like, oh yeah, even though you didn't get good grades, you went to mega shithole high school where all the kids get to riot and go crazy and nobody does anything about it. This kid went to Lowell High School, a magnet school that you have to test to get in, and got honors. Well, you got honors at shithole. They got honors at one of the most highly recognized high schools in American history. We're going to go with Tyrone over Mr. Chen. And it's, no. It's you're all faking the funk, and at some point there's going to be a generation of people who are going to resent the left forever for taking their youth away, for lying to them. That bunch of kids who ended up going to major universities, and it turned out, oh, you got gaffled. None of you actually had the grades to get in these universities, and we faked this from the beginning. Now we're finding out that this is very likely actually like Atlanta, Georgia, and stuff like that. A lot of these chocolate cities, that a lot of their educational systems are producing complete illiterates, or even to a great extent a generation of illiterates in a lot of cases. Because we're seeing them on YouTube, we're seeing them on Twitter, and these illiterates and illiterates are starting to insist that people don't realize how smart they are, and it's like, oh no, one, you're obviously from pretty dumb stock. Oh, your dad wasn't around. That's another centile down, and then. Let's see. We look even further. Oh, it's turning out that on top of it, you don't like reading. In your prime years, you're not crushing books. I remember an ex-girlfriend of mine. She resented that in the prime of my career, I was reading up on my career. She really resented it. She wanted to watch stupid movies halfway through and then start chatting. And I'm like, I could have been reading, and then we could have had, you know, lots of time to hang out, but instead you've burned my fucking time, and I'm never going to get this back. And just some people, stupid as stupid does. And so more and more, I am really liking now that people need to really keep pressing this IQ thing, because this is killing them. I could see this already. This is fucking these people up, because you come at them with what is known about the field of psychometrics, and that you just point out to them, I'm sorry, Scrabble much? Have you ever played Boggle? Have you ever noticed how some video games are more complicated than others, and that they have a recommendation for what age plays it because of their intelligence quotient? Because nobody will say that a child would have the intelligence quotient of an adult. Nobody would say that. You know, so it's like, well, obviously there's something there that we would call intelligence. You know, oh, no. You know, you see, once everybody's 18, it's just like a diploma. You know, everyone gets one. Everyone gets a Social Security card, and now everyone's equal. Oh, but the white people keep getting all these great jobs that are really hard and pay a lot. You know, so yeah, just keep bombing them. Just keep carpet bombing them with reality, and eventually they will bunker or hunker. You know, later.